The man on the shoulder. It was just after 1 a.m. when I pulled onto Highway 89, a long stretch of blacktop that cut through the desert like a scar. I had been on the road for hours, driving back from a construction site in Utah, and the monotony was beginning to grind me down. My job had kept me late, later than I planned, and by the time I packed up the truck and hit the road, the sun had already sunk behind the desert mesas. I told myself I'd be fine. A little coffee, some music, and I could make it home before dawn. But now, hours later, I was questioning that decision. The road was endless, a 2-lane strip of faded asphalt with no shoulders worth mentioning, flanked by dry scrub and jagged rocks that glowed faintly under the moonlight. My headlights carved a narrow tunnel through the darkness, and outside of that beam, the desert was nothing but a wall of shadow. The hum of the tires filled the cab. My eyes were heavy, burning from the strain of staring at the unchanging black ribbon of highway. I tried rolling the window down for fresh air, but all I got was a gust of hot, dry wind that smelled of dust and sun-baked asphalt. The desert had its own silence at night, not the soft kind you find in forests, where crickets chirp and owls hoot. This silence was absolute, heavy, as if the land itself was holding its breath. It made every little sound my turn signal, the creak of the steering wheel, the hiss of the AC feel like an intrusion. By the time I hit mile marker 137, fatigue was clawing at me. I slapped my cheeks, stretched my neck, even shouted once or twice just to hear my own voice, anything to stay awake. And that was when I saw him. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the headlights, a fence post or a tall cactus catching the beam at the right angle. But no, there was a figure on the shoulder of the road, maybe 50 yards ahead. A man. He stood facing the highway, perfectly still, arms at his sides. He wasn't flagging me down, wasn't waving, wasn't even making himself visible, just standing there. My stomach dropped. Who the hell would be out here, at this hour, miles away from the nearest town? I slowed instinctively, my grip tightening on the wheel. The man didn't move. His posture didn't shift. Even when my headlights swept directly over him, he stood like a statue. That was when I noticed his face. He was pale, too pale. His skin looked washed out, almost gray, like the color had been drained from it. His eyes caught the headlights and glinted, wide open, unblinking. I swallowed hard, heat prickling the back of my neck. Something inside me screamed not to stop, to keep driving. So I did. I eased past him, staring straight ahead, trying not to let my peripheral vision catch too much. But curiosity got the better of me. I glanced into the rearview mirror. The shoulder was empty. My hands began to shake. For a moment, I thought maybe I had imagined him. Maybe I was more tired than I realized. I'd heard of truckers hallucinating on long hauls. Maybe it was happening to me. I shook my head, forced a laugh, tried to shake it off. But then, just a mile later, my headlights picked him up again. He was standing on the shoulder, same posture, same spot. Only this time, he was closer to the road, just a foot or two from the white line. "No," I whispered, my voice breaking. I swerved slightly toward the center line, giving him as much space as I could. As I passed, I couldn't help it, I looked. His head was turned this time, tilted toward me. His lips were moving, opening and closing in silent rhythm, like he was whispering. I stomped the gas, pushing the speedometer past 80. My heart pounded in my throat. The desert blurred past, mile markers ticking away, painfully slow. I told myself not to look in the mirror this time. Don't check, don't confirm, just drive. But when I reached mile marker 142, my headlights revealed him again. This time, he was standing in the middle of the road. I screamed and slammed the brakes. The tires squealed, the steering wheel vibrated violently in my hands, and the truck skidded sideways, gravel spitting out from under the tires. My seatbelt locked across my chest as I came to a stop, headlights pointed straight at him. He was no more than 20 feet away. The beam of light washed over him, casting long shadows on the cracked pavement. His mouth was still moving, faster now, as if muttering a prayer. His arms began to rise slowly, stiffly, reaching toward me. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt tight, like someone was sitting on it. And then he vanished. Not stepped aside. Not faded. One blink. He was there, next blink. Gone. The road was empty. I sat frozen, shaking, for what felt like an eternity. The hum of the engine was the only sound, loud and unnatural in the silence. My breath came in shallow gasps, and I realized I was gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles had gone white. Finally, with every nerve in my body screaming, I hit the gas again. I didn't care if I was speeding. I didn't care if I drifted over the lines. I just needed to put distance between me and whatever I had seen. For the next 30 miles, I didn't dare look in the mirrors. I kept my eyes glued to the ribbon of asphalt stretching ahead, praying for the sight of civilization. When the glow of a gas station sign finally appeared on the horizon, I nearly broke down crying. I pulled in fast, the gravel crunching under my tires, and parked under the bright fluorescent lights. My hands shook as I killed the engine. For the first time in what felt like hours, I exhaled. Inside, the gas station was mercifully ordinary. Fluorescent lights, humming refrigerators, the faint smell of coffee and hot dogs that had been sitting too long. I grabbed a bottle of water, walked up to the counter, trying to act normal. The man behind the counter was old, maybe in his 70s, with a lined face and eyes that looked like they'd seen too much. He rang up the water, then paused and studied me. "You okay, son?" he asked, his voice gravelly. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a shaky laugh. "Something like that." He didn't smile. Instead, he leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "You came from north of here, didn't you? Around mile marker 137. I froze. My hand tightened around the water bottle. "Yeah." "Why?" The old man's eyes narrowed. "Don't stop for anyone on that stretch. Not unless you want them riding with you." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My mouth went dry. "What do you mean?" I asked, but he just shook his head, like he'd already said too much. I drove home that night with the gas station lights fading in my rearview mirror, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I hadn't left him behind. Even now, years later, every time I pass mile marker 137, I keep my eyes dead ahead and my foot heavy on the gas. Because some things on the highway at night aren't meant to be picked up, headlights in the rear view. It was close to midnight when I finally left my sister's house in Reno. I hadn't planned on staying that long. The original idea was simple: drop in for dinner, have a beer, catch up a little, and head home. But conversations have a way of stretching into the night when you haven't seen someone in a while. And before I knew it, the clock on the wall was creeping past 11:30. My sister told me I should just crash on the couch. "It's late," she said. "You've been working all week. Don't be stupid." But I had work the next morning, a meeting I couldn't miss. And besides, I wanted the comfort of my own bed, my own routine. So I waved her off, grabbed my keys, and stepped into the night. The air was dry and cool. Reno streets were mostly empty at that hour, the occasional neon sign buzzing above shuttered shops. I drove through the quiet city until the lights thinned and disappeared, replaced by the vast darkness of the desert. The highway stretched out in front of me like an endless ribbon. US Route 50, the loneliest road in America. I'd heard the nickname my whole life, but it never felt more fitting than at night. During the day, the desert had a strange beauty, mountains jagged against the horizon, salt flats glowing in the sunday. At night, though, it became a void. Black sky above, black earth below, nothing but the thin strip of asphalt lit by my headlights. I settled into the drive, cruise control at 65, window cracked just enough to let in the warm desert air. The smell of dust and sagebrush drifted in. The hum of the tires was steady, hypnotic. For the first half hour, it was uneventful. Just me, the road, and the comforting monotony of forward motion. Then, in the rearview mirror, I saw them. A pair of headlights. They crested a hill far behind me. 2 white pinpricks against the darkness. At first, I didn't think much of it. Even on Route 50, you'd occasionally pass another driver. A trucker, maybe. Or someone like me, heading home too late. But something about those lights made me uneasy almost immediately. They didn't move like normal headlights. They didn't grow larger, didn't gain on me. They just hovered at the same distance, holding steady no matter what I did. 5 minutes passed, still there. 10 minutes, no change. I told myself not to be paranoid. It was late, I was tired, and maybe the driver just happened to be going the same speed. Coincidences happen, but still, my eyes kept darting to the mirror. Watching, waiting. 15 minutes. The headlights never shifted. Not closer, not farther. Just fixed. I tapped the brakes, dropping my speed a little. Any normal driver would have taken the chance to pass, but the lights slowed too, matching me perfectly. My stomach tightened. I pressed the gas again, climbing back up to 70. The lights followed, always the same distance. That was when the unease turned to fear. I gripped the wheel tighter, my palms slick with sweat. The desert around me felt even emptier than before, as if the whole world had narrowed to just my truck and those 2 glaring lights behind me. I tried to focus on the radio, flipping through static-filled stations until I found a faint country song, but no matter how loud I turned it, I couldn't block out the awareness of those lights. And then without warning, they vanished. One blink, they were in my mirror. The next, gone. I jerked forward in my seat, heart pounding. I flicked my eyes to the side mirrors, craned my neck to peer out the back window. Nothing. Just empty black highway stretching forever. For a moment, relief washed over me. Maybe they'd taken an exit. Maybe they'd turned off. I even laughed a little, the sound shaky and hollow. Get a grip, I muttered aloud. I drove another mile, 2. The road ahead was empty, my shoulders slowly loosening. And then the headlights came back. Not behind me. In front. My breath caught. Less than 100 yards ahead, the same pair of lights blazed to life, facing me dead on in my lane. I screamed and yanked the wheel, slamming the brakes. The truck skidded sideways, tires screeching, gravel spitting from the shoulder. For a terrifying second, I thought I was going to roll. But the truck shuddered, straightened, and came to a stop, headlights glaring down an empty strip of road. There was nothing there. No car, no lights. The silence was suffocating. The ping of cooling metal echoed in the cab. I realized I was gripping the steering wheel so hard my hands hurt. Minutes passed. I didn't move, didn't even breathe properly. Just sat there, staring at the asphalt glowing in my high beams. Finally, with shaking hands, I shifted back into drive. That was when I saw them again. In the rear view. Closer now. Too close. The glow filled the mirror, bleaching the asphalt white. They weren't a half-mile back anymore. They were right on my bumper. But there was no sound, no engine, no tires. Just the silent, blinding lights pressing against me. Panic surged through me. I slammed the gas, the truck roaring as the speedometer climbed past 80, 90. The lights followed, perfectly, always the same distance. I swerved side to side, testing them. They moved with me. I slowed suddenly, hoping they'd overshoot. They slowed too. It was impossible. The longer it went on, the stranger the lights became. They began to flicker, not like bulbs failing, but like blinking. On and off. Slow at first, then faster, strobing in my mirror until my vision blurred and my stomach churned. I tried to look away, but I couldn't. My eyes locked to the mirror, transfixed. My chest tightened. My breath came in shallow gasps. The cab filled with light, pure and white, erasing everything else. The last thing I remember is the world dissolving into that glare. When I woke, the sun was rising. My truck was parked neatly on the shoulder at mile marker 212. The engine was idling, the driver's side door was wide open, and I was sitting in the seat with my hands folded neatly in my lap, like someone had placed me there. The seatbelt was unbuckled. I never unbuckle while driving, ever. The strangest part? My headlights were on, pointed backward, as though the truck had been turned around in the night. But the odometer showed I hadn't moved an inch. The Hitchhiker at exit 212. I've always hated driving at night. It isn't the dark itself that gets me, it's the isolation, the way headlights carve tunnels into nothingness, the way your own engine is the only sound for miles. If something happened out there, if you broke down, or worse, you'd be alone in it. And I don't care how tough you think you are, everyone feels small on a deserted highway at 2 in the morning. That night was worse than most. I was coming back from a delivery run that had taken longer than planned. A late pickup, a busted tie-down strap, a missed fuel stop. By the time I merged onto the interstate, the sky was already black, the air heavy with the smell of rain. The forecast had said scattered storms. Out here, that meant anything from a drizzle to a biblical flood. The road was empty, just my headlights, the slick asphalt, and mile markers ticking past like clock hands. By the time I reached exit 212, I'd been driving for nearly 12 hours. My shoulders ached, my eyes burned, and I promised myself I'd take the next rest stop. That was when I saw him, a figure on the shoulder. At first, I thought it was a broken-down driver. He stood just past the exit ramp, half in the shadows, half illuminated by the glow of the streetlight overhead. He was tall, wearing a dark jacket with the hood pulled up. One arm was raised, not waving exactly, but lifted, like he was waiting. I slowed instinctively. I shouldn't have. Everything I'd ever been told said don't stop for strangers on the highway. Too many stories, too many risks. But something about the way he stood there, not frantic, not panicked, just still pulled me in. As I rolled closer, I caught details. His clothes looked damp, clinging to him like he'd been walking in the rain. His face was pale, almost washed out under the sodium lights. But his eyes caught me. Wide, dark, too intense. I rolled the window down a crack. The smell of wet asphalt rushed in. "You all right?" I called, keeping one hand tight on the wheel. For a long moment, he didn't answer, just stared. Then, finally, he nodded once. Slow. "Need a ride?" I asked. My voice sounded strange, too loud in the silence. Another pause. Then he stepped forward, closer to the cab. That was when I noticed his feet. Bare, skin pale against the blacktop. Something in me screamed no, but my hand was already reaching for the door lock, already pushing it open. He slid into the passenger seat without a word. The smell hit me first damp earth, like he'd been lying in mud. The air in the cab seemed colder with him in it, heavy somehow. "Where you headed?" I asked. He looked straight ahead, not at me. His voice, when it came, was low and flat. "East." That was all. I nodded, merged back onto the highway. The tires hissed over the wet road. For the first 10 miles, he didn't speak. He sat rigid, hands on his knees, staring at the darkness beyond the windshield. I kept sneaking glances, trying to size him up. He didn't look dangerous exactly, just wrong. His skin was too pale, his lips too dry, like he hadn't had water in days. Finally, I tried again. "So, you break down or something?" He turned his head slowly toward me. His eyes caught the dash light. They were darker than they should have been, almost black. "No," he said. I swallowed. "Been walking long?" Another pause. A while. Not much of a talker. Fine. I told myself to just drive, drop him at the next town, and be done with it. But the farther we went, the heavier the air in the cab seemed to get. The smell of damp earth lingered, stronger now, like rot. My stomach twisted. When I passed mile marker 219, I glanced at the mirror. That's when I saw it. His reflection wasn't looking forward. It was looking at me. My heart stuttered. I snapped my eyes back to the road. Then, cautiously, I looked again. In the passenger seat, he was staring straight ahead, motionless. But in the mirror, his reflection's head was turned, eyes locked directly on mine. Cold sweat broke across my skin. I gripped the wheel tighter, forcing myself not to react. Maybe I was imagining it. Maybe it was the light. But as the miles dragged on, the reflection didn't move, didn't blink, just stared. I tried to think, tried to plan. There was a rest stop coming up around mile 230. If I could just make it there, maybe I could get out, maybe find someone else around. The rain began again, soft at first, then harder. The wipers squealed across the windshield. The road gleamed wet under the headlights. Finally, the rest stop lights appeared in the distance. Relief surged through me. I flicked on my blinker. The man beside me finally spoke. His voice was low, almost a growl. "Don't stop here." The words chilled me. I forced a laugh. "Yeah, well, I need a bathroom break. Been driving too long." His head turned toward me. Not the reflection him. Slowly, stiffly. His face was pale as bone, lips barely moving. "You won't come back." My hands trembled on the wheel. I passed the exit. I don't know why. I just obeyed. The silence in the cab was unbearable now. My chest felt tight, like the air was too thick to breathe. When I dared another glance at the mirror, the reflection was smiling. He wasn't sped. I drove faster, desperate for lights, for civilization, for anything but this endless road. But the highway stretched on, empty, black, rain hammering down. And then, as suddenly as he'd appeared, the seat beside me was empty. The smell of damp earth lingered. The air was still cold, but the passenger seat was bare. My stomach dropped. I looked at the mirror. He was still there, sitting in the reflection, smiling wide, eyes black as night. I didn't look again. When I finally reached town, I pulled into the first lit gas station and stumbled out, legs shaking. The clerk gave me a strange look, but I didn't explain. I never drive that stretch of highway at night anymore, and I never, ever look in the passenger mirror. Because some rides, once you pick them up, never really leave.